what's up? We are back with another episode of Running Things. My name's Riley. I'm your host. I'm still the editor over at tempojournal.com as well. Pretty fun episode today. Certainly very different to, I think, anything we've brought you guys before. Of course, last week we had New Zealand's finest Camille Buscombe on the show. If you haven't checked that one out, you can find it before this episode, obviously. Today we are going to be talking about a pretty wild ultra up in New South Wales taking place this weekend. I'm really excited about it. I'm actually heading up to shoot this. It's actually going to be the first race or event that I've covered for Tempo since, I don't know, Olympic Trials Marathon in February in the US. So that'll be interesting. It's the Coast to Kosci ultramarathon. It's 240 kilometers, or I think that's about 150 miles for our American friends. Starts in Eden, which is a small town not that far from the border of Victoria and New South Wales, and kind of snakes its way up to the top of Mt Kosciuzsko, which is our tallest peak in Australia. 240 Ks, 6,000 meters of climbing. We're going to be talking to Michaela McDonald. So Michaela is one of the entrants in the race. She's a friend of Tempo. Michaela was part of our speed project team in 2019, which broke the women's record on the course from LA to Las Vegas. So really excited to chat to Michaela. I've actually never even covered any kind of ultra, whether it's 50K or 100K. So I'm pretty excited to go and cover a 240K race. We'll bring you guys all that action as it happens on social channels, and we're also obviously writing a piece for the website as well. So let's jump into it. Let's hear about what inspires someone and motivates somebody to enter a 240K ultra. All right, guys, super fun episode today. We are getting off the track, getting off the road. We're talking all things ultra running with Sydney ultra runner Michaela McDonald. Mick, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Riley.
Hey, what's super excited about this coming weekend for anybody who isn't yet aware of it. We're going to be talking all things Coast to Kosci, which is about 240K ultra from, I think it's Eden, a small little town, south coast New South Wales, up to Kosciuszko. Geez, where do we start? Explain a bit more about the race for us. It looks like would it be fair to say it's a fairly grassroots style event?
For sure. So Coast to Kosciuszko, Coast to Kosci as it's affectionately known, is a race that's been around for quite a while and sort of started with a few guys who thought, let's travel from the coast of Australia to the highest point. And I'm pretty sure in those early years, one of the guys actually took like over 70 hours to do it. So it's come from this thing where there were just huge amount of time. So a bunch of guys who decided to set out and have this. It's a lot of what ultra running is about, and it's a lot of what trail running is about is the journey and traveling point to point and carrying yourself that distance. So something like that is always appealed to a lot of ultra runners, but also in saying that, not a lot of people are going to want to run 240K. So it kind of keeps that field pretty small, which keeps the grassroots feel of it alive. At most ultra events, there's no prize money, so it doesn't attract anyone from that sense. Like the prize you get for finishing is an akubra, and each subsequent finish is a pin to put in the akubra. So yeah, it does keep it pretty grassroots, and there's not a lot of fanfare involved.
That's bulk Australiana. What a prize. Now, I think this is your first time running this event, right?
Yeah, we was meant to run in 2018. Trained. So there's a huge process involved in actually getting into the race, because they are super protective of the finishing rate. So they don't want to just send out anyone into something like that and go, good luck. So to get in, you've got to have run 100K and 100 mile within a certain period. So I kind of made the decision that I wanted to do the race after doing my first 100 mile back in 2017, and decided I want to do Coast to Kosci. So signed up to do that in 2018, and then 2 weeks out, they had to cancel it. So it's always been a bit of a thorn in my side, and I had a bit of a just kind of reset after that and focused on some shorter stuff. And then I actually had plans to run it as a solo FKT at the end of the year. And then it popped up as coming back on the scene, which like no one really expected it to come back. So the fact that it's come back is really cool. First time lining up, but second time ended.
And I think a couple of months ago when it was announced that it was back on, you pretty much found out it was back on, and you had to run I think you almost went out like that weekend or the weekend after and ran 100K with some mates just because you had to make sure you tick that box. Is that right?
Yeah. So they said, we're bringing this race back. Entries will open in a month. If you were due to run in 2018, you'll get precedence, but you had to have run 100K since you'd entered. And I sat there and went, I haven't run 100K. And I'd spoken to two of my other mates and that were due to run in 2018. And we kind of joked, like, should we just go run 100K? And I kind of sat on it and I was like, well, yeah, like I'm going to go run 100K. So that weekend, the three of us came up with the easiest way to run 100K in the Blue Mountains. And a good buddy of mine who actually used to run Ultra 168, which was like super like critical and kind of driving the interest for ultra running in Australia. He had mapped this route out that he'd always wanted to do, and we decided to go do it. Yeah, I mean, I was so undercooked to do it, and so were both of they. One of them hadn't run longer than 20Ks for about a year. So yeah, it was pretty grim, but there was always that thing in the back of my head that was like, if we finish, like I'm almost guaranteed an entry, so it's worth doing. So yeah, that's it's good training. Nothing else.
Now I don't want to kind of normalize what you're doing, because like the way that you talk about it and the way that like we speak about it is like, oh yeah, after my first 100 miler, or yeah, we just went out and decided to run the 100K. Like people would be listening to this thinking, oh, okay, Michaela does these kind of like these events every weekend, right? But
yeah,
240Ks is like a monumental challenge for anybody. Like
100%.
you can't be like totally trained and prepared for something like this. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, for sure. And unfortunately, I've actually been having this conversation a lot recently that it's unreal that this like ultra running has really gained this huge interest from like runners and even triathletes jumping across and that kind of thing, just endurance sports in general, I guess. And it's kind of become this new thing that people will go out and run a big distance, maybe to fundraise or anything like that. But it definitely trivializes how hard that stuff is. And I had this conversation with Tim that like it took me, it took a lot for me afterwards to kind of sit there and go, this isn't normal. Like this isn't just going out and doing your half marathon or even like a 10K. Like half marathon is still a bloody long way too. But I got to the last sort of 10K and Tim was with me at that point. Sorry, Tim's my partner, but he came out and crewed me and I was with him for the last 10K and I just looked at him and said, this really hurts. Like I've forgotten how much this really hurts. And he was like, yeah, it's really tough. And it definitely gets normalized. And I go through these waves of being super confident that I can run for 240Ks. And then I have these moments of going, oh, like I could fall apart and I could end up being out there for 70 hours. Like who the hell knows? Like it's one of those complete unknowns. And I guess like the other beauty is that people are doing this stuff faster and faster and faster. And you look at these guys and you go, holy moly, like, like our buddy Kirsch on the weekend running an 50-mile race, averaging 4-minute Ks for 50 miles. Like that's not normal. But you look at that data and go, oh shit, like there's guys out here doing that stuff. So it's awesome and it's great. But I guess, I just I don't want people to look at what they're doing and think, oh, I'm only doing a half marathon or I'm only doing this because it's a big thing that people do. Like UTA every year, someone will always say, I'm only doing the 50. And like, it's never only a 50. Like,
yeah. A little later on, I want to ask you about good advice for people who are trying to like, get into this kind of world. But for yourself, like, the sort of the gateway drugs to a 240K race, was it a pretty natural progression for you of like, maybe you did a 50K, then 100, then 100 miler, and is it just constantly like, okay, well, what's next? How do I keep topping this? Is that kind of how it happened for you?
Kind of. I did my first 50K like completely blissfully unaware of what I was doing. I ran the whole course the weekend before because I wanted to make sure I could cover the distance. And I look at that now and I think that's so stupid.
Right, so you did the 50K the week before the race and then did it again for the race.
So me and my best friend had signed up for our first 50K and we were like, shit, we should, like, I don't actually know if I can run 50K. We should probably check if we can run 50K first. So yeah, we went out and ran it, which just in hindsight, if I had a client now who was like, oh, I think I should run 50K, I'd be like, you're an idiot. But like, I was that idiot at one point. Yeah. So I ran that 50K and just had the best day. Like, I just really, really enjoyed myself. And then, was like, well, and I mean, Tim, obviously my partner, was running them and I was crewing him, and it kind of like built from there. And I've never been super interested in running the distance for the sake of running the distance, but it's been more so about events that have really drawn me in. So like Tarawera in New Zealand, I crewed Tim there and I was like, this race is unreal. I want to come back. It looks amazing. The scenery is beautiful. The people are unreal. So that was my first 100K. Yeah, first 100K back, I don't know, 2016, I think, 15. And I had a shocker, absolute shocker, but like loved every minute of it. And there's this like funny thing that happens at the end of a race where you think you're absolutely flying and you're like, oh, I must be running like at least 4-minute pace right now. Like I'm moving pretty well for someone who's run 100K. And then you look back at your data and you're like, I was running 6-minute Ks. But it's one of those things that I got to the end and I was like, actually feel pretty good. Like I feel like I could do more with this. And then Tim ran 100 mile and I was like, man, I'll give 100 miles a crack. So I ran 100 mile and was like, I really felt like I found kind of my thing with 100 miles. Like I loved it. I just loved it. Like I didn't really fall apart too badly until probably the last 5K where I was really like, I'm over this. I want this to be over. But really, really just loved it. And as a consequence, looked at like what I could do from there. And we are kind of limited with races in Australia, especially that super long distance stuff. I mean, there's heaps of 100Ks popping up and that's awesome. But like 100 milers are pretty hard to come by. And then I was like, well, I've run a 100 mile or I've run 100K. I may as well just enter this race. And I'm one of those ultra runners who really loves running on the road for long periods, which everyone's always like, why? I don't know. You kind of get the whole like, man, trail's better than road. But there's like a really nice feeling of just being the monotony of the road. So that throws a lot of people off from doing that race. But I kind of said to Tim, I think this is my niche. Like I think running for a really long period on a surface where I'm not going to bin it because I'm pretty good at binning it on trails and stacking it and really injuring myself. So I think, yeah, it's not like so much an organic progression, but more so like I looked at what was out there and like my first 100 mile was at this event that like the event shirts are wrong. So like the checkpoints on the event shirts don't actually exist and they're in the wrong order and they're spelt incorrectly and like, you know, it's just one of those events that no one's ever gonna hear about, but the community you build around it like is unreal, and that's kind of this thing that draws me towards racing. And like I'm not a huge racer. Like I don't race because I love of winning or anything like that, but I just race because I can hang out with my friends and you get to do something cool. And yeah, that's kind of what I guess pushed me into that direction.
That like I guess one of the reasons I'm interested in that progression is, you know, like we are seeing ultra running like absolutely explode. Like firstly, we're seeing like trail running generally as a hobby explode, or as a sport rather. And then we're seeing participation in ultras like go through the roof. And so like, and we look at something like UTA, we're seeing, okay, that's obviously selling out faster and faster. So, if we look a couple of years down the track, are we going to see a lot of those 100Kers at UTA start to look for something more, whether that's a 100-miler and then, potentially into something like Coast to Kosci?
Yeah, I definitely think the 100-mile is the new 100K. Like, the 100K was always this thing for people that went, that's the pinnacle. Like, no one will run further than that. And then not only are people running far, but they're running fast. So it's like, it's this progression that's happening at the same time where you've got guys running 12-hour 100 miles, which is like previously, like, that's insane. Like, it's one of those things that I think attracts people because you've got a lot of guys who come from the road, like fast marathon runners who are looking at running 50Ks, 100Ks, but that also means that, and I mean, this isn't true for everyone, but like Tim and I often have this discussion that we're not fast enough to be competitive at 100K anymore because you've got guys that are running 2:11 marathons. Wow. Like in the States, for instance, there's a guy who ran JFK who is a 2:11 marathoner, and everyone was like, this guy's gonna, absolutely rip it. He had a good run. I think he was like 8th or something like that. But yeah, I think there's this new kind of like level of runner coming through, which I think is really cool. That it's just becoming so competitive, like at those distances. And I mean, all you've got to do is look at an event like 6-foot track, which attracts a huge amount of people. Like every year it's a lottery and it's pretty hard to get into. And Hanny Alston, who's got the women's course record there, it's insanely fast and it's super impressive. And that kind of stuff is really, really cool. But I do think as that stuff gets faster, people kind of look at it and go, oh, that's really fast. I'm a person who kind of likes to run all day. Maybe I'll go check out 100-mile or done a couple 100Ks. I'm going to do a 100-mile. And I think because of our American friends who obviously operate in miles, they have a heap more 100 miles over there. And like all the big races, like your Western States, your UTMBs, all that, they're all 100 milers. So everyone wants to do the cool 100 milers. So I mean, I get it. It's 100K is bloody hard. And it's definitely not an easy feat, but there's a whole other level to running 100 miles. For
context, like, a lot of our audience are, track fans or road running fans. And as I say, like we start to normalize these distances where they kind of, lose some of their meaning, 100K, 100 mile, 240K like Coast to Kosci. How long are we talking for Coast to Kosci? Like, it's I think 6,000 meters of elevation, which, as I think you said to me, when you consider the distance, it's not that much climbing. But how long do you expect to be out there for?
It's funny, right? So I look at what other women have done there before, and I know that if I have the day I'm capable of, I would like to think I could get as close to the course record as possible. I think given the field that's lining up this year, I'm not going to be surprised if like at least an hour, if not 2 hours, goes off that record, which is the record there is like a couple of minutes over 30 hours. So it's fast.
30 hours.
So quick. It's a funny race, right? Because there's a few things that come into play. So obviously, when you're running for a day and a half, anything's going to happen. Like if you think about what you did a day and a half ago, like how many things have happened since then? So there's that, right? Then there's the added context of it's the middle of summer. So it could be scorching hot, but we're running from the beach and we're running into alpine country. So as soon as we reach alpine, like who knows? It could end up being freezing. Like there's so many variables. And as much as I'd like to sit here and quantify, like, from this point to this point, you're going to take this long and you need to do this and you need to do that. It's like, I'm going to start, I'm going to finish, and hopefully it's going to be within a reasonable time. The men there before have run like quick. So the men's record is just a smidgen over 24 hours. So that's like 6-minute Ks for 240 Ks, which is, like if you're a big track fan, like I'm sure 6-minute Ks doesn't sound at all impressive, but when you think about holding that for 24 hours, it's quite a long time. But again, like the men's field this year is super stacked as well. So it's going to be really cool to watch what happens there. The guy who's got the course record though is like a super class athlete, like top 10 UTMB and Western States and things like that. So who knows if that record will go. The women's record is super impressive too. I just think that there's like a few women in the field that could really give it a nudge, and it's come close before. So yeah, I think only good things can come from having that field, and I think if it's the right day, I think it'll go, and I think there'll be a few women pushing for it.
I want to talk a little bit about I guess the mental side of it. I mean, over a distance of 240 Ks and, you know, maybe around 30 hours, like I dare say you're going to spend and it's a small field, so you're going to spend a fair bit of time on your own. And
yeah,
you know, there's highs and lows in any race. There's highs and lows in a 5K, right? You know, like for people who can't comprehend what you're doing, like how do you just keep yourself moving forward when you know, it's the middle of the night and you're by yourself and you're sick of it and you've had enough, and, you know, like how do you keep going?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like I do like a ton of visualization in my training because I think it's something that really helps. If I visualized a section, I mean, everyone visualizes the moment where they cross the finish line and they've won and this great stuff's happened, but you know, the fun stuff. But if I'm doing a session and I think, I don't really want to do this, and then I think about it, I'm like, no, like when you're by yourself at nighttime and you're trudging along, like I kind of draw on those moments. But I you know what, and I think it's really pertinent to the year we're in because like we choose to be in these scenarios. Like I remind myself, like I'm choosing to suffer, and it's a period where people are going through a lot. I struggle a lot with anxiety and depression, and have been in a lot of situations where I haven't chosen that suffering. And I think it's quite a privilege to have the opportunity to choose to put yourself in that scenario. That's not to say there isn't going to be points where I'm not going to be happy, like 100%. Like I know that's going to happen. But my strategy, funnily enough, my strategy is normally allowing myself to feel that way. So I know a lot of people will think to themselves, no, like, you know, try and ignore it. But I have a bit of a thing in my head where I definitely always break up a race into a few segments. So for me, that's going to be getting through the first 50K, getting through the 100K, then getting to the nighttime. And my thing of getting to the nighttime is that all I can focus on during the night is a headlamp, really, because you can't see anything else. And someone will be with me at that point. So it's going to be one of those things that I'll draw on the people around me, because that's why I pick the people I pick to be there, because they know me and they'll get me through it. But also that we're all there because we chose to be there. And there's a lot of people that would have loved to have raced. There's people who, I mean, probably look at things like this and think how stupid, but I think in a year where things have just gone completely haywire, it's something that I can control. Like it's an event that I can put, you know, I've put everything into, and I dedicated pretty much the whole of 2018 to getting into the race and to racing that event. And I mean, I've dedicated the better part of this year to doing it as well. So I think drawing on that stuff is important, but also just allowing myself to be miserable if I want to be miserable, but also snapping out of it. Like, you know, okay, you can be a sook for the next 5Ks, but after that, we're going to get on with it, which is, it's worked in the past. And like worst case scenario, I've got people there who will tell me to snap out of it. So
I think it's interesting to hear you talk about like breaking the race up into chunks, because again, for like a lot of like people who haven't run an ultra or whatever, they might be thinking, oh my God, this woman can run 200 Ks. That's incredible. But like the principles are the same as running a marathon or a half marathon, right? Like it still hurts
100%.
and it's still hard, but you break it down into pieces you can manage. You're going to feel good. You're going to feel terrible. Like, and you just kind of get through it 1K at a time, right?
Well, the beauty of ultra running is you've got such a long time to fix things. So like if stuff goes bad in a marathon, you don't have long to fix that. Like, and because there's such a, whenever I trained a whole year for a marathon and kind of broke down trying to train for a marathon last year, funnily enough. But as soon as you're off the pace in a marathon, or as soon as something's going wrong in a marathon, you've got a very like small window to fix that. Sounds stupid if you're a 5K runner. You're probably like, that's ridiculous. That's a long time to fix things.
Yeah.
But, it obviously gets shorter and shorter from there. But with an ultra, like I vividly remember leaving when I did 100 miles. I left a 50K checkpoint and I said to myself, you can feel garbage until you get to the next checkpoint, which was like 30 Ks later. And so I just like sucked so hard for 30 Ks. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I'm 80 Ks through now. I'm halfway. I'll feel good for the next half. And it is the beauty of ultra running, because I guarantee, unless you're a freak, of which there are a couple, everyone is going to have low points. Like regardless of who you are, if you're at the front, you're at the back, you're in the middle, you're going to have a low point. So, and the same goes for marathon running. Like I honestly have way more anxiety and doubt around running a marathon than I do running ultras, because it's just like it's a really small period in which you can fix things. So I think and the big misconception with ultra running is that you run everything. You don't run everything. So there'll be a bit of hiking involved. Which is also really nice, because you can kind of, it's tough with a race that's as flat as Coast to Kosci, because the expectation is you run a lot more than what you probably would any other 240K race. Yeah. So.
I want to ask about nutrition, because like I feel sick at the idea of like fueling for a marathon, right? And we've discussed this before. And a few weeks ago, I had maybe I don't know 4 gels in a marathon, and I felt sick for like a day and a half afterwards. It was gruesome. What's the plan? What are you going with for this?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I can pretty much eat whatever. I'm super lucky in that sense. If I had to eat gels for 240 Ks, I could, which is repulsive to say.
Can we talk about before we get into your nutrition for this race? What's the most gels you've ever had in a race?
Oh, don't bring that up. A lot, like 50 probably. Yeah. Yeah, it's not nice. Yeah, no, it's gross. But
was that in 100? Was that in 100 miler?
Yeah, all I ate was gels for that whole race, and that was a 26-hour. And when I say it was 100 mile, it was like 180 K. So it's a little bit like classic ultra running. Nothing's ever as long as they tell you it is. It's always longer. It's always shorter. So yeah, 26 hours worth of gels. Like I was not in a good way, but you get through it. Yeah, it's not enjoyable. Gels. I fainted at the end, which probably gives you a good idea of how well that sustained me. But
all right, what are you having this time?
Okay, so I'm heaps more sensible this time. So I think because I'll be moving fairly slowly at points, I plan on eating some noodles at night time. I'll have some potatoes and things like that. I will have quite a few gels. I've got probably close to like. Not that I'll eat them all, but I've probably got close to like 60 or 70 ready to go.
70 gels.
Well, actually, Tim's going to keep a record of everything I eat to try and get an idea of like how much I'm actually eating. So we'll have a tally at the end. So I'll keep you posted. But so Coke is my best friend when running. done plenty of ultras purely on Coca-Cola. So hit me up, Coke.
Do you flatten it first?
Yeah, do what
right.
you do what you can. I mean,
right.
Yeah, I ran 6 foot purely on Coke, and it was the best thing ever. My big problem is hydration. So I definitely don't drink enough, and I made that mistake at Tarawera where I drank too much and ended up with hyponatremia, and I don't want to end up in that scenario again. So I've really changed things with my hydration, because that was a huge problem. Like I was, pretty crook. So electrolytes, that kind of thing, not flooding myself with water. I've learned a lot since then about actually how prone to hyponatremia women are, which is just another joy. So just like a few things in that sense, like electrolytes are a big thing. And like in terms of eating, I'll eat what I've got. Like a bit of real food if I can, but for me, I'm more about function over,
Another good like piece of context or window for people into like how grassroots this race is. I haven't mentioned this to the audience yet. I'm attending the race. I'm shooting the race and writing about your race experience for Tempo. So that will be on the site a couple of weeks afterwards. But so because I'm going to be at the race, I've been like looking at the website for the race, which is incredible, and the social media and stuff. And one of the big announcements this week is that one of the primary schools along the race route, I forget what it is, you'll be able to jump in, but their big like fundraiser for the year is putting on like a tuck shop basically for the race. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the kind of people that we've got. So it's like, I love it. I think it's great.
It's awesome.
They were the big losers when it came to Coast to Kosci not happening. That and the playlist I made for 2018. It's really sad that didn't get a play. But Toowoomba Public School. So they're a tiny school. I think they've got like 50 students or something, like teeny tiny. And you'll see it when you drive through. It's super cute. Like in the middle of this valley, it's beautiful. Like if you could go back and be a kid, you'd want to be there. So the tuck shop items are as you would expect, like your classic bacon and egg rolls, which I'll be having none of at that point because that will certainly end a day early. But it's the other big one is in Dalgety, which is probably, I'm going to get this distance wrong, but it's just out of Jindabyne. Like when I say just, it's tens of kilometres, but out of Jindabyne, and there's a pub there. And the big thing is about everyone being able to get to the pub before it closes. So I'll do my best in that sense. But, apparently the locals there like really G up for the race to get out there and give you a hard time. So looking forward to that. Wow. Some, drunk heckling from the locals. But, it is super grassroots. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that everyone calls it a race and, it is a race, but it's very much an event and like a community thing. And it's great that it's back because it's the longest event that we've got in Australia, and I think it's cool that we can go from the coast to the summit of Australia and like pass through some little communities that need it at the moment.
If anyone from that primary school tuck shop is listening, I'm coming strong for the cakes and the slices. I think there's juice poppers as well. I'm gonna hit a juice popper, maybe grab another one for the road. So looking forward to that. Speaking of, it is a really small field, right? It's like 50 participants or something like that.
Yeah, so they announced 60 and like 11 people have dropped out. So it's 49 now. Yep.
I think like you get to like a week out from the race and you're like, I don't know if I want to run that 240 next weekend. I'm going to...
You know what makes me nervous is there's guys that have done it a stack of times that have pulled out. I'm like, what are you doing?
Life's too short these days, Speaking before about like the progression, for you and sort of, gradually stepping up in distances, like the question has to be asked, like and I'm sure I'll ask you probably over a beer after the race, like, where to from here? Like, do you think about that? Do you worry about that? Like, is this going to be some kind of itch that you can never scratch of like always wanting to find a longer race?
Yeah, like I thought that too. It's funny, right? So I think my progression will come more from getting better at what I've done. So I don't necessarily want to run longer. There's events that I want to do, which are like not in the immediate future. And obviously with not being able to travel as well, that changes a lot of things. And I'm also not going to unnecessarily travel for races at the moment. What's the point? There's definitely big races out there that I want to do. And it's funny because in terms of actual time, it's only going to really be 4 hours longer than what I've done before. So you look at that and you kind of go, all right, well, I could go and do something like hard rock, which is shorter in distance, but in terms of time is going to be quite a long day out because of the effort it takes. So there's those kind of crossovers as well, except I'd never do hard rock because I hate hiking. So not for me. But in doing something like a marathon, for instance, like that kind of challenge, funnily enough, actually excites me a little bit more than maybe going out and trying to do something longer or, it's interesting. Like I find the challenge for me because, I did a marathon pace tempo workout yesterday and I was like, I have no idea what marathon pace is right now. Like I'm so slow. I do a stride at like pretty much marathon pace. So building like a bit of speed back up is like a good challenge really. So I don't know. I think there's this thing with people who always want to say, oh, I've done this, but I've done this, but I've done this. But I don't, I don't really have an itch to I don't want to go and I'm not a big like running for running's sake kind of person. Like I love running and it's such a huge part of who I am. Like I work in running. I coach. I've got, I run every day. Like it's such a big part of me that I never want to wear out my love of running. And so I'll never chase that next big event or anything like that. And I'm not a huge racer anyway. I get huge like stress around racing. So for me, being able to actually find the challenge in a shorter event is kind of cool too. Like doing a half marathon and running a half marathon well last year, like that was a huge like highlight for me last year because I was like, oh, I came off the back of doing 6 foot track and came back from doing speed project and thought, okay, I'm going to try and run a marathon this year. So yeah, I don't think it necessarily has to progress in a greater and bigger direction. I just think we can get better at I guess finessing the skills we've got. So like for me next year, my huge goal is to like have a real red hot crack at 6 foot track because it's kind of the event for trail running and I had an okay run last year and I know I can do better there. So it's one of those things that, I don't really necessarily want to go longer. I don't know how much like more I can find myself out there by going longer.
Yeah. I want to finish by asking that sort of question I alluded to earlier. Like there'll be a lot of people who are, at different stages of their running journey who might be thinking like, oh, 100 mile, 100K, impossible, like 50K, impossible. I could never do that. But like everyone has started somewhere, right? And I think one of the things we're seeing in 2020 is like more people are getting off roads and running more trail. And maybe now they're starting to think, well, okay, there's some races coming up over summer. Am I capable of entering a trail race, finishing a trail race of whatever distance? Like, what's the advice you would have for people who are, maybe road runners of some degree, but looking to kind of take that first step into entering a trail race?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a few parts to it. And it's like nothing has made me happier than taking mates who ordinarily would only run road and taking them on the trail and showing them a spot that they've never been to, and them just being like completely overwhelmed with how beautiful it is. But I think the big thing, and I 100% did it last year when I was training for a marathon, it's really hard to get out of that mindset that you need to be running a certain pace and it's got to be continuous. And unfortunately, the nature of most trails, depending on where you go, but the nature of most trail is going to be you're going to run slower. Like it's just a byproduct of the terrain you're on. And it's just not the same, obviously. So I guess if you're a road runner, I guess just adjusting your expectations in how fast you're going to travel over that kind of stuff is the first step. Because I know a ton of road runners that I've taken on trail and they're like, oh, we're running so slow. And they kind of get frustrated with the process. And it is slower, but there's something so special about going out. And I think for everyone as well, that's kind of been the beauty of, I guess if you can see a silver lining in something like COVID, especially for you guys down in Melbourne, like being stuck in that 5K radius, if you're not fortunate enough to be out in the bush, like I'm sure there's nothing more that you guys would want to do right now than to get out of where you've been and to go hit some trail. And like, it's been a huge highlight in our friendship is like seeing your like love of trail grow. And that's been really cool. But yeah, I think just adjusting your expectations, not being afraid to hike, like, I think it was Lainey maybe who said, like, talking about hiking.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's it can seem kind of counterintuitive, but you've got to do it sometimes. Like, I don't know many people that can run like, straight up the side of a mountain. So I think that's important. I think just like dipping your toe in the water, maybe go onto a trail that's like not super technical to start with. Like, I remember the first trail Tim took me on, and I remember being like, who are you? There's no way you guys are running this shit. Like, it's rocky. There's tree roots everywhere. Like, I can't run this. And I got so frustrated and like so angry with myself that I couldn't run that stuff. So I think like something like Yangs down in Melbourne is like perfect for, your road runner kind of transitioning to trail. And, best thing to do, like if you've got mates who run trail, get them to take you. They'll love it. They love, like, trail runners love showing their cool skills to their road mates. Like,
yeah,
that's
actually.
I think, I mean, there's so many trail races now. People write great race reports. Like, you can get an idea of what the trail looks like. Yeah. I mean, there's so many people that we coach and we chat to on like a daily basis who are like, what do I do? And it's really no different from stepping out of your door on the road. It's just about like going somewhere new, taking your phone, you just never know, and like a snake bandage maybe, and just making sure that like you just enjoy it. Like I almost just switch my Garmin off sometimes if it's going to be something that, I mean, like when we were in the Blue Mountains doing the mini and the tempo shoot, I remember thinking like, oh gosh, like taking, I wasn't sure how you were going to take it, but it was so nice to see like how much you enjoyed that. And I think like terrain like that, for instance, like that's scary to take someone out who's never run that kind of stuff. So that was, I think that's cool. But I think just adjusting your expectations around what that terrain's going to look like and how fast you're going to move over it. And because no matter who you are, there's always going to be an element of hiking when it comes to trail running.
I enjoyed my first trip to the Blue Mountains. I don't know how much our film crew enjoyed lugging their gear around, but that's a story for a whole different podcast. Mick, so excited to. Well, for me, I'm excited to just. I love Melbourne, but to get out of Melbourne for the first time in many months and come and see the race. I'm excited for the tuck shop. Everything that kind of comes with Coast to Kosci, and for everybody listening and watching this on YouTube, like we'll be bringing you some stuff from Mick's race kind of live as it happens and afterwards as well. So Mick, thanks for your time today. Thanks for jumping on the show, and good luck for the race.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait to see you guys. It's going to be such good fun, and I mean, I think it's one of those kind of, I hope the race continues. So like more and more people hopefully want to go and do something like that. I don't know.
The idea of 240Ks or like even 100Ks, I've never run, the furthest I've run is a marathon, right? Which for some people is really far, for some people is peanuts. But like, it's interesting to hear the process for doing something like that it's the same for pretty much everything, right? And I'm sure even like sprinters, they break their race down into chunks. It's the start, it's, different sections and then finishing. And, if you're someone who like is daunted by the idea of stepping up in distance, whether it's stepping up from a 5K to your first 10K or a 10K to a half or, whatever, like it's about breaking it up. You can't focus on the whole thing at a time because it'll overwhelm you and you just won't get it done. So it was cool to hear like Mick talk about, breaking it up or give yourself 5Ks, which in the scheme of a race that length is not much time at all. Give yourself 5Ks to like sook and be unhappy, but then, you snap out of it. Also the idea of like, it in 2020, of course, it's a privilege to be able to put ourselves in these situations. Being in Melbourne, we haven't had the chance to race and like people are screaming out for races and, all that sort of stuff. So just having that perspective and that awareness of like what you're choosing to do and getting to follow your passions, I guess. Yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed that episode. I found it super interesting to chat to Mick. As I've said a few times, I'll be there. I'll be covering the race. I don't know what that will be like, 30 hours of shooting and taking notes. And I'll try and ask Mick some questions and get some good quotes for the article as well. But she might tell me to piss off. So that's it for this week, guys. Last episode of the season is coming up next week. We'll be talking all things Lonnie 10 and Lonnie half. Until then, that's it from me. Thanks for being here with us and keep your easy days easy. Thanks so much for watching Running Things here on YouTube. If you haven't already, do us a favor, hit that little subscribe button. It really helps out our channel. Also, tell your friends and don't forget to follow us on Instagram @Tempo Journal.